Hello and welcome back to the Extreme Cinema Podcast, Season 2! Fucking
We're
hell, we're
we're
doing it!
back, Stenner.
We are back, Dom. How have you been for the past year?
Decent. But how have you been?
Decent would be a good word. So yeah, Season 2, I don't even know how to tell you how impulsively this has happened, but we are back, and we've got 3 new episodes for you, and then we're going to do a mid-season break, and then 3 more episodes for you. And Dom, what are we watching this week?
So today we thought we'd start with actually a good film, and we're doing Audition.
We're doing Audition, which it's literally my favorite horror movie ever made. I don't think, I mean, stuff can come close, but nothing tops this. Like I can say that without reservation.
Yeah, you have a lot more to say on this than me, I think. I love this film, but it's like your absolute favorite.
No, it genuinely is. And for those who haven't listened to this podcast before, we go into full spoilers all the time. So just watch Audition if you've not seen it, or listen to us talk and ruin the entire movie. Not that this movie
Yeah,
can kind of get any more ruined from the discourse.
exactly. If you don't already know about Audition, what are you doing, really? Like,
Yeah. I guess the way to talk about it would just to start with my main point of the film and why I wanted to talk about it so much. Because
yeah,
the main thing people say about Audition is, oh, it's one part rom-com and then, surprise, it turns into a horror movie, as if it's a sort of prank. And it's absolutely not like that.
watching this again, I completely agree with you, and I always have that it has such an underlying thing right from the start.
Yeah, there is this sinister energy, and it doesn't initially come um, from the woman who's dating, who obviously turns out to be a serial killer. It comes from him, Ioma, our main character, and his friend, and their actions, which are really deceitful and kind of awful. But because Miike's directing is so deadpan in this, like I could see how you can watch this and go, haha, cheeky lads just sort of doing cheeky lad thing. When it's not like that. I mean, setting up an audition and having women come in thinking they're professionals, but it's really to audition for a girlfriend. That's super unethical behavior, and the way he's trying to have this one-sided relationship um really sets the tone of the film, so that when you get an hour into it, it's not like, oh, the man in the bag has just jumped up, I guess we're in a horror movie. It's like, well, this shit has been uncomfortable from the get-go, frankly.
Well, yeah, it's when he's first looking through all of the kind of auditions and is like, oh, it's like picking a new car. You're like instantly should be like, there's something off here. Like,
I think, I think the main theme of the film is certainly, yeah, a women's place in society and kind of male objectification of them to a certain extent. Like, when I think the most important scene in the first half is when they're in the bar and they're saying, oh, what kind of woman do you want? I want like a well-trained woman. And his
yeah,
friend like sees women enjoying themselves at the bar and be like, ugh, common women.
yeah. Whereas like, I need a woman that can dance and can play piano and everything. It's definitely. I mean, how much would you go into that? It's a feminist movie.
Oh, I'd say entirely. I mean, I know that's the other main thing, is people divided on whether this is a feminist film, whether it's just leery and misogynist, which I don't. I mean, I really don't see it, or whether it's nothing to do with it, which also I don't see. I mean, how you could watch this and think this has nothing to do with gender roles would be beyond me.
Well,
I
yeah,
think
it's the exact thing it's about, really, in my eyes, anyway.
one of my favorite lines in it, which was so poignant, and it's not something I clocked until this most recent watch, was their cleaning lady who's like working ridiculously hard because she's cleaning an entire house and that's her job, and she's like
Mhm.
taking a break and it's like, oh, it's so hard, and he tells her, oh, you need a woman, you look tired, like a woman,
Yeah,
and she, she's a hard-working professional woman, and even in that, those gender expectations of the man needs the woman is, an accessory to him, that's still drummed into her, and I found that very interesting.
yeah. I don't think I ever actually picked up on that. Now you've said it. That's so obviously.
And then, so, at the end, you get the retribution, the torture sequence, which I think I want to get into a bit more later, and about how that's this version of
Yeah.
Japanese exploitation tropes and whatnot. But she's ultimately doing it for his lies.
Oh yeah. It's. it's because of like, it doesn't make this guy out to be an amazing guy that just gets, like, picked on for no reason. Like, it is he does something for this retribution to happen.
Kitty, 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 kitty.
Yeah. Like, I
And
mean,
I
everyone
mean,
knows that scene, like
everyone knows. That's the thing. It's just been spoiled to death. I don't know if it's possible to go into the film not knowing the surprise. I was listening to Kermode's introduction on BFI play to it, and he said he saw it at the Rotterdam Film Festival, which is really where it started to get international notoriety, and that all
Mhm.
he knew it was a Japanese and its film, and it started out, and he's like, oh, it's some rom com. That is just I would love to be able to watch it like this.
Oh, well, that would have been amazing. Like, if you'd because obviously I knew first time I ever saw it that what it was, and obviously Takashi Miike, so I knew it'd be messed up, even if I didn't know what form and messed up it was gonna be.
I knew it was a horror movie, but it was my first Miike. I mean, I think it's the first Miike most people, at least in the West, watch. It's certainly his only one in the West, I would say, is somewhat mainstream. I mean, amongst film fans, it's known. If you're a film fan, you have seen Audition, probably.
Yeah, Audition was like his first big one, really, weren't it?
It's definitely his first big one. I mean, he makes about 5 films a year. He's
Yeah,
a,
it does.
a, a
Yeah.
madman. And before Audition, it was sort of largely a lot of them were straight to video. The Yakuza films, samurai films,
Uh,
a lot of them are straight. I guess his biggest one pre-Audition is Dead or Alive, which was fairly big in Japan. It was two kind of famous B movie stars going up against each other. And that film is absolutely fucking mental, but also really boring. Like it's an hour and a half and there's like 20 minutes of solid hardcore entertainment in it and the rest of it you're just sitting there like kind of boring, but it's got like the best final sequence ever. This put him on the map internationally, and I think a lot of Western critics were kind of surprised when they saw this rather um thought-provoking, poignant, very, very well shot, slowly shot film that he mainly did hyper stylized Yakuza films before.
yeah,
But he still bounced. I mean,
which is hilarious because then his next big film is Ichi, which is complete opposite of the
was
spectrum of
Ichi
this film.
was
2001 Ichi.
Ichi 2001? Fuck. So
Yeah.
13 Assassins was after because I'd say that's his second biggest in the West.
Oh, yeah, 13 Assassins is what, 2010, something like that? Yeah, 2010, yeah.
Yeah, I've not seen that yet, I really need to.
It's very good, very good. I mean, I love talking about Miike because he's such a weirdo anyway.
That's the thing, so he's got, like, a very mixed filmography, like, Visitor Q isn't that good. I think that in terms of, like, fucked up Miike, that's also up there with Ishii as well. But then you've got, like, he did the live action JoJo's Bizarre Adventure film, he did the Ace Attorney film.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, he just they're like, "We need something done. Get Takashi Miike on it." He did a First Love a few years back, which was like a return to Yakuza film. I loved that film. I thought it was so entertaining because it starts out as kind of the opposite of Audition. It starts out as this like quite serious Godfather-esque drama and ends in just comic book absolute madness. It was great.
Yeah, and before we return to Audition, everybody watch Blade of the Immortal as well. It's incredible.
Oh,
Like
that's great.
like
That's the thing. Man's directed 100 films. Like even if most of them are, you can kind of shrug. Blades of the Immortals, bloody great film. I think I've not seen Bird Peeper of China. I really want to see that because that's like a more straight edged Miike.
yeah, I've not seen I mean, when I say I've not seen much, I've seen a bit, but he has 1,000 films, so it's hard to keep up with.
You know what else I found out in researching this episode? He produced the first Yakuza game.
Did he really? That makes sense.
Yeah,
That
that
makes
makes
so
sense. I
much
mean,
sense.
who knows how much involvement he had in that? Because it's like, oh, we're doing a Yakuza game. Let's get Takashi Miike's name on it, or he properly, worked on it. But my God, I mean, I've played Yakuza Zero. I love that game so much.
Oh, yeah, they're incredible. I mean, a fun fact about that is, do you know the director is the same guy that does Super Monkey Ball? Like,
I
yeah.
did actually. I always forget that one. But I think before we leave the subject of who Takashi Miike is, I think it's important to know that what he is now in the industry in Japan most professionally recognizable for is that he is the kind of expert, right, on TV aimed at like young girls aged between like 4 and 8 or 10, like really young. He developed this series called Girls Plus Heroin, Like, not heroin isn't the drug. That would be more of an old school Miike film. Heroin with an E. And it was a massive hit, and it spawned movies that, of course, Miike directed, and, like, more importantly than that, toys and music. Like, because it's all, like, J-pop band magical girl stuff. Uh,
Yeah.
from the second I watched of it, it looked incredibly over the top. But I mean, I'm no expert on Japanese kids television, surprisingly. But I could easily imagine it's all like this.
No, I remember you telling me that years ago, and I was like, "What? The Audition guy is like a."
It's honestly like, I mean, he is a legend, and I saw the introduction to the Arrow Blu-ray before I watched this, and I think I hadn't seen it before because when I watch a film for the first time or when I show it to a friend who's not seen it, I'm going to skip the introduction in case they go into spoiler territory because you would not believe how many directors are really okay with doing that. And he said like he's not entirely happy with the film, and I just think, what? What? This is the best thing you've done by mile. I've seen. I checked the number on Letterboxd. I've seen, a decent proportion of Miike's films. Certainly the most notable. This is the best thing you've done by a mile, mate.
Oh yeah, I mean, I love Ichi, but obviously this is the best film by by like a mile.
I think for me watching this, and now I've, each time I watch it, I've seen more Miike. So from the first time I saw it, I hadn't seen any, and now I've seen a decent amount. Is that I always think of Miike as such an extra director, like such an extrovert, absolute madness. But like the first half of this film, because I feel like the first half of the film is a really great portrait of loneliness, and not like, a really over the top, obviously he's alone portrait, just a portrait of sort of, I guess, widowed businessman in Japan. Like, he's got a really good relationship with his son, but it's also fairly distant. Like, we see them fishing, it's a good relationship, but also, they're eating dinner separately and he's spending a lot of time in his room, and it's a great portrayal of loneliness. And the first half of this film, it's so classical cinema. Long shots, end on, keeping the conversation going, like lots of, showing the house. It really reminded me beyond anything 90s and ridiculously stylized, anything even Japanese new wave. It reminded me of like classical Japanese cinema, like something akin to Ozu's style, and I don't think that was unintentional at all.
Yeah, almost Tokyo Story stuff.
Almost, or I was thinking more even the flavors of green tea over rice, because I feel like that's got somewhat of a similar feel to the first
Yeah,
half of this film, almost. Because the only time before the midpoint when she leaves the hotel room, uh, that there's any kind of stylized in is the audition sequence, which by God is good. And this has reminded me that I also wanted to talk about the editing, because oh my God, this is one of the best edited films I've ever seen in my life, I think. I think I can now say that. Like, it's so subtle. The cuts are perfect. The transitions are perfect. I don't think it's something you're going to watch this and go, oh my God, the editing. Like, I just saw Babylon. It's a terrible film, but you'll
yeah,
obviously notice the editing, Nat. This isn't like that, and it's perfect.
yeah. It's one of those sole editing choices that does provide one of the greatest jump scares of all time in movies as well.
Oh yeah, because also when we get into that second half, then you get the Miike madness, and you get the quicker edits, the montages, the weird angled shots, the color tilting, which is amazing.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the turning point with that person in the bag jump scare when the phone goes off is where it goes from this film that some people are like, oh, a nice little rom com that may be a bit fucked up to one of the most screwed up things I've seen for
We
a
we
while.
we are in we are in extreme horror territory here. We are in, and it's because it's so down to earth realistic in its themes and its plot, and especially in that first half. Oh God, it hits. It hits so so well. Have you heard the fan theory that none of the second half really happens and it's just a dream in the hotel room?
I've not, no, but that makes a lot of sense.
It does, but it's also, I think it's nonsense. But it does when you watch it. You're like, I could see this.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, I could see it because it's kind of like her imagining almost what like because it turns so much. It is amazing because I think that's why it's seen as such an extreme movie as well. Because obviously messed up stuff happens, but I've seen films where 1,000 times worse stuff happens. But this feels more because of the first half. I think.
I agree, and It's an adaptation of a Ryu Murakami novel, which is it's not the same Murakami who did Norwegian Wood and whatever the short story is from Burning. Authors are not my strong point.
No.
But yeah, he also wrote Love and Pop, or wrote the novel that Love and Pop, the Hideki Anno film, is based on. And there came out around the same time, and I can definitely see similarities there in their concern for like women's experiences in Japan and stuff. And I think that concern is also part of the heart of the film and why it hits so hard.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, that just goes back to it is definitely a feminist film. Like,
It definitely is, and I feel like it's in that it's a subversion of Japanese kind of exploitation tropes because you obviously have the kind of weird dream sequence detective bit where she's working out, he's trying to find her, and then you're hearing all these
yeah.
stories of abuse and past trauma and whatnot. Um, but then you get to the torture sequence, which is oh my, it's just pain. It's like I think the first time I watched this, I had to skip over it. I'm like, it's horrible to watch.
I mean, we've definitely got to talk about that, but one of the most iconic horror moments, I think, basically ever now. It got into Shudder's top 100 that I watched, and obviously they know their shit. Like,
What number was it?
oh, I cannot remember. Pretty high up, I think, though.
I mean, fuck. I mean, just thinking about this, I don't know what I'd put. Maybe some stuff from like Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. Maybe the ending of The Wicker Man, actually, I think would probably be my number one.
Yeah.
Bit in Benny's video, if you count that, I would count that, but most people wouldn't. Bits in 2001, I would legitimately count as well. But yeah, it's up there. It's up there.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's very unsettling. I mean, everybody knows the needles, but, like, every
I feel like it's such an amazing subversion of like a lot of Japanese horror and exploitation tropes because torture is very prevalent in like classic exploitation films and it's generally leery and misogynist. Like I'm talking specifically of torture of women, like in on a higher genre art end, you got like Urogoro films, which are like a mix of eroticism and horror, and on the lower end, you've got violent pinku. So in that one, you've got like Angel Guts, Red Classroom,
yeah.
and the Female Prisoner Scorpion seasons, and like Angel Guts and a Red Classroom, because it's the only one I've seen, is a bloody good film. It's so sleazy. It's so difficult to watch. It's like it's really hair-raising stuff, and I don't buy that film isn't leery and sleazy. I have a friend who has defended it as some kind of postmodern film about misogyny. I really don't think it is.
It's just a slaves
Misogyny is
fest.
definitely
Yeah.
it's definitely a theme of the film, but it is not. It's not like this, which is actually this is properly about a woman's place in society. That is just a film with so much sex in it. Oh my god!
Mm.
I just if you really want to dive into exploitation films, I would watch Angel Guts Red Classroom, but like only if you're like hardcore into this shit. It's really well shot. I'll give it that much. I do think it's a good film. But like even on the higher art end, like something as absolutely amazing, right, as Blind Beast, which I watched recently. I think it's a masterpiece, frankly. I was blown away by it. Um, that is also a bit leery and misogynist. I mean, that centers on a woman who's kidnapped by an artist, and the artist wants to make a sculpture of her body.
Mm.
And again, there is some attempt to pretend to subvert it, but I don't feel it is. I just think that's an absolutely incredible film about like obsession, and the sets and stuff are amazing. But I feel like Audition subverts those tropes, and those tropes really pierce into a lot of Japanese films. Belladonna of Sadness as well, you could say, does the same thing.
Well, I think it almost comes with the territory, especially in Japanese exploitation, Japanese cinema in general, if we wanted to talk that much of
No, I would agree. I mean, especially in war movies, like The Human Condition has some pretty upsetting sequences in that.
yeah, still not seen The Human Condition, by the way.
Oh man, it's
Like,
so good. It's so good.
not quite extreme enough for for this, though.
But like, I feel the reason that the torture sequence in Audition is so extreme is one, the build up to it, but also two, it had to be that extreme to subvert those tropes. It's not. It's really meant to be the anti-Leary, you know, sadistic torture of those exploitation films. I think in a similar way to what Hard Candy would do,
Mhm.
sort of 6, 7 years later.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost well, it not even almost, it is a this is what we think of your leeriness almost, like, this is what if we turn it round on you, look how it looks, basically.
I mean, that's also the metaphor with the man in the bag who's,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
who's got various limbs part off. She has put him in that position of like dependency and objectification that is a metaphor for that position which she as a woman has felt her entire life, and not just with her like traumatic past, but also within this relationship, which the main character has consistently tried to make it as unequal as possible.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the genius thing about this film is it says all that while still doing it in a very Miike way. Like it does not hold back. Like the feeding scene is horrific as well. Might actually be the bit that I hate the most in the film, and hate in a good way. I mean,
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, Mike does shit like this all the time. Like Dead or Alive is a fucking Yakuza film, but they've got this scene of some guy in like a paddling pool, like bathing in filth, and you're just like, why Mike? Why are you making me watch
of
this?
course, he loves that. I watched a few years ago now, but I know we talked about it. Visitor Q, and I was just like, this guy is insane. Like this guy is honestly insane.
The more I think about Visitor Q, the more I think I don't like it. Frankly, I mean, I appreciate the like the shot on. I think it was shot on video or digital video, like lo-fi energy of it. But that is just shock for the sake of shock. I don't think. I think its commentary is basic on
Yeah.
the family. It's really not anything important. Whereas this film has so much depth and subtlety and dare I say sophistication.
Oh, it definitely does. I mean, especially in the first half. I mean, when you were especially talking about like the editing and how it creates a creepy vibe at the beginning, we didn't even talk about like the quick cuts to him seeing his dead wife and stuff like that. That
Oh
if
man.
anyone thought this was just like a rom com, how on earth do you explain that that bit? Like,
Man, I mean the fucking opening is genuinely heartbreaking. The way it's directed with the kid walking down a hospital corridor, it's like a masterclass in opening a film,
oh,
frankly.
definitely. And I mean, it's genius in showing, um, like, that he did love his wife and all of that, and then getting trauma in there straight away with the son and his relationship with his son. It's genius how it opens.
And I love the fishing sequence because the metaphor of the big fish is a fairly obvious one, but then they call it out in the film. He says, "Well, I'm interested in real women," and it's such a little good microcosm of their relationship. That bit.
Yeah, definitely. And there's probably something definitely to said with like how the son has women over and stuff there as well, and a reflection on the dad and everything.
The dad's attitude when the son brings the woman over, well, girl, because they're teenagers, is
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, like it's very subtle acting.
Oh yeah, definitely. For a film like this, the subtlety in the acting is ridiculous.
There is really, I think, there's just such good reason why this is my favorite horror movie of all time, and every time I watch it, it just sort of confirms it more. I mean, horror can really get a bad name in mainstream cinema circles, less so nowadays than maybe when this came out. But like, if you want a like fucking amazing character drama, a film about women's place in society, but also a portrait of loneliness and grief. I mean, there's so many layers to this film. I really think this is a great of all time.
Yeah, definitely. In fact, when you were just saying like today horror scene is a bit more, this is honestly like the precursor, like the grandfather of creating that idea almost. Like I know what so many horror directors are like, look at Audition. This is such a big influence.
That yeah, I mean, yeah, Eli Roth types all the time. I mean, that's not
Yeah,
great for
well,
talking about horror as art. The guy who did Cabin Fever and Hostel. I mean, Takashi Miike has a cameo in one of the Hostel films along with like Deodata and stuff. In the Arrow video introduction, Miike says again that he's not too satisfied with parts of the film. He elaborates no further on that, but also that this is an interesting turning point in Japanese cinema. And it is because this is the start of the J horror craze. Ringu was like just a bit before
yeah,
this, like a year max. And what I love is that all those big films, Ringu, The Grudge, Pulse, Dark Water. They all got American remakes. They've got tons of sequels. Audition stands as this like alone amazing film, and it's the
Thank
best of
God.
that bunch by a
Like,
mile.
could you imagine the
Yeah.
American remake of this?
They must have considered them. They must have jumped their mind. They just would have thought, who the hell wants to watch a remake of this?
Well, yeah, they did Old Boy though, so I never put it past them.
That's true, but I think a remake of Old Boy has, if you were an executive who cared nothing about art thinking in a boardroom, a remake of Old Boy has more, maybe,
Yeah, I guess so.
um, mainstream appeal. Luckily, that film failed.
Oh, thank God.
It's incredible. I don't even know where I can begin on this. I think, or end, I guess.
Yeah,
I think the last thing I wanted to say is, uh, Kermode's story, Mark Kermode's story, also in that BFI introduction about Ken Russell, that he gave a DVD copy of this to Ken Russell, and Ken Russell threw it out the window and was like, "This is too much, man."
that's amazing. I did not know that.
Like, if you were freaking out the man who made The Devils and Altered States and whatnot,
Yeah,
my man, give yourself a round of applause.
it must be that, like, you go into those films, you know what you're doing, you know what's happening. This just takes you by surprise completely and just leaves you there like, "Oh my God."
I really admire Miike, man. I really, oh, he's one of those directors. You could almost look at him as a Roger Corman figure, but he's got such a better hit rate than Roger Corman did.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you have to have at least some good ones in a billion films that he's made, but I love Miike even though I've seen like 5 or 6 of his films, really.
I should have like looked on my letterbox before this podcast at which ones I've seen of his. I've definitely probably seen 10-ish, but everything I've seen has been memorable. I mean, the worst thing I've seen from him is probably Dead or Alive. And you know what? I think about the last scene of Dead or Alive like every single day. I'm not joking. It's like one of the most incredible final scenes
Do you
ever.
remember the random one we saw in the cinema? The, Yakuza Apocalypse one?
Yakuza
Yeah.
Apocalypse at midnight, and oh man, and the frog costume.
Oh my god, yeah. What a random movie. Like,
Uh, that I didn't even like that one, to be honest, but that was good fun at points.
no,
At points, it was a
it
bit
was like, I
dull.
didn't love it, but in the cinema, that was a fantastic experience. Just been like, "What the fuck is this?" Like,
um, I found it quite interesting because a friend of ours just watched this because I might have let him know that this is the episode we're doing first, and he didn't really like it, but he compared it to Hitchcock,
eh,
and I find that really interesting because it didn't occur to me at all. But I kind of see it with like this obsession with this female character. There is a kind of Vertigo element to this film.
yeah, I guess so, yeah. I mean, it's not the biggest stretch I've even ever done, so it's not like
Oh, that we haven't done many stretches in this one. I think Ozu is the
yeah.
largest. I can't wait to do some crazy stuff in this season. But yeah, I think that's kind of it. Could you imagine? You know what? If Hitchcock had been around in like post 80s, like when you could really 70s even, if Hitchcock was newer, I could see Hitchcock making something similar to
Yeah,
this. If he was really allowed to do it.
true. Like, if he went full insane, and it was probably in there, to be honest, yeah. Like,
Well, Frenzy was meant to be even way more fucked up, and they told him like no. Like Google, I don't think we'll go into it now because it's completely irrelevant. But like, if you Google Kaleidoscope Frenzy, which was the original title, just like his plans for it were way where you could not get away with it, even when Frenzy was made in the late 60s or early
yeah, I can
70s.
imagine.
Like Hollywood wouldn't have done it.
No.
But yes, I think it's time for final thoughts. Dom, I can't tell. Did you like this
Yeah, it's
movie?
pretty good, yeah. It's alright. No, but yeah,
It's all right.
it's, I mean, it's incredible. Like, love Miike, this is his best film. It's easily a 10 out of 10. Not quite as big a fan as you are, because I have other horrors I like more, but still.
I mean, your favorite horror is still Scream. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's almost there, but
Yeah.
this is It's one of the greatest films of all time. If you're a fan of horror, watch it. If you're a fan of Japanese cinema, watch it. If you're a fan of movies in general, watch it. I mean, I really, if you're a movie fan, if you think you're a movie fan, you've probably seen Audition already. But if you haven't, for whatever reason, you must watch it. It's just, it is like nothing else. Nothing else has done this. I watched Tropical Malady in the cinema recently as part of the BFI's Sight and Sound, playing the 100 greatest films, and that has a change up in it as well. And I didn't know that was going to happen in that film. I guess, very minor spoilers, but it goes from a kind of LGBT romance to a monster movie randomly. But like, that was a good film. That was a really good film, and I like the change up in that. It does not do it like Audition does.
No.
It doesn't have that consistency throughout that makes Audition, from beginning to end, the best horror film ever made.
I mean, that's a pretty good ending word. The greatest horror film ever made.
Yeah, good conclusion. So, Dom, what are we watching?
I'm so excited.
Next week.
I'm so excited. We will be watching.
We've done a really good movie, so what's next?
I've not even seen this yet. I will be watching it for the episode.
No.
Danzig's Verotica, which I hear is the worst thing that's ever happened to cinema.
I have to watch this again. I have seen this, and I'm going to have to watch it again for this episode. It is, when it came out, I'll just say this, when it premiered at whatever film festival it premiered, I woke up and my Twitter was full of a bunch of articles being like, this is the new The Room.
I remember.
So we're in that level territory next week.
I'm a big Danzig fan, so I'll have a lot to say, so I'm excited.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for listening. Season 2. We are back. We are here. I hope you enjoy this season. Thank you so much, and take care, and we will see you next week.
Yes, bye.
You've been listening to the Extreme Cinema Podcast with Alexander Sternberg and Dom Loach. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider subscribing, as it really helps us out. The original artwork for the podcast was done by George Arnold. The Extreme Cinema Podcast, available where all good podcasts are available.